problem or issue maybe with that, with LeBron and the Warriors being out there, and what a lot of people do think a lot of the talent is out there on the West Coast. You don't know how good these teams are, or a lot of people don't that haven't seen them before. And I'm, to be fair, I'm looking at the finals. I'm sure there's a lot of people that haven't watched the team from Canada either this year on the national TV and in other places and everything, or looked it up on the NBA channel, unless you're probably from Canada or a Raptors fan or somewhat of that nature. Just a thing to think about. I've always wondered why the college championships are on Mondays when they know they have school on Mondays, and they play the football games on Saturdays and basketball's on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Like, why is the championship not on Saturday, Terry, where you don't have to worry about missing class and stuff like that?
Well, that's kind of hard for me to understand or explain to, I guess. I mean, how many people watch the national championship in football on a Monday and then do not go to work on a Tuesday? I guarantee some people that's in their criteria.
I know a bunch of people across the state of North Carolina when the Tar Heels won the championship when I was in college that did not go to class the next day or was able to go to class.
That was the big knock on this past college football championship against Alabama and Clemson. Nobody watched it and nobody went to the game because you had two southeastern teams that were playing in California on the West Coast. Nobody went to the game because you were asking two teams, fan bases, in South Carolina and in Alabama to travel to California and then come back that night for work the next day. So nobody's going to go to the game. It would have made sense for them to have put that in Atlanta because it's kind of in between both of them, or maybe someplace in Florida. But, they don't, of course, they can't predict who's going to be there next year. So that obviously doesn't work out that way. But the same thing is like, you don't want to watch it. It's weird because nobody in California cares about either one of those teams, so they weren't going to go to the game. So there was that was one of the things that was big as well.
Think of this. Now we're talking money.
Yeah.
We wait until these two teams we get all the way to your finals of who's going to play, and then we give them 2 or 3 weeks to each city make a bid. Yeah, to hold this thing, and then that's where they come.
Ooh. I mean, I don't see a bad idea about it. I don't, because college football is so dominant in the South and really on the eastern part of the United States, where they're always at least in the Final Four. Or think about it. One year we had Georgia, Clemson, and Alabama, and the outlier was Oklahoma. All of them were East Coast, and it ended up being played on the East Coast. So that was demographically worked out perfect. But for Clemson and Alabama to both travel across country, hardly any of their fans travel. You're almost playing in an empty stadium for a national championship game. That just doesn't make sense.
How would you do a college basketball game if it come and all of a sudden your two teams that are in the finals, or I'm just going to throw two teams out there. Let's say it's Louisville against North Carolina or Duke, either one, and everybody bids on that, and you had to pick one place. Where could you pick a place? I mean, inside a dome, you'd have to build it up. I mean, or would you?
I thought you were talking about basketball. I was going to say, if it's basketball, it already is a dome.
Yeah.
So for that, it's just it would come down to either Charlotte, but that would almost be too much of a home game if it was for North Carolina versus Louisville.
But you wouldn't be able to. But so many fans get in there.
Yeah.
So you'd have to hunt.
Well, it would have to be. It would have to be an NBA stadium, or it would have to be like they have gone now, football stadiums that they just build the hardwood on there. So it couldn't be Panther Stadium because they're still not a dome.
Nope.
You would have to go to Georgia, which that's where if I'm not mistaken, that's where the next. It was just held in Minneapolis, up there at the Vikings. Next year for college basketball, it's being held at the Superdome or the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. So that, I mean, it would fit that way, but like we were getting at, if it was Oregon to get in against like a North Carolina or one of the ACC schools predominantly on the East Coast, and they were holding it in Atlanta, there's no way in Oregon, and like Kevin said, they would hold the game on a Monday night. why would somebody from Oregon fly all the way out to Atlanta to watch a late game for East Coast time? For them to, it's easier to go back west though, because you gain hours. But even still, the fact that you would have to fly there, then fly back to make it back for work on a Tuesday, you're not going to have any Oregon fans. It's basically going to be an ACC or whatever East Coast team has made it home game. Yeah. That's what hurt when me and Carson went to Atlanta. If you and that's what they said about the Super Bowl. It was on the East Coast. It was in Atlanta. It was more like a Patriots home game because there were more Patriots fans there than Rams fans because nobody from the Los Angeles wanted to fly out to Atlanta. So yeah, I don't know how to fix that for some people, for some teams, especially the West Coast teams obviously hurt more than the East Coast teams because there are more East Coast teams and their larger demographic is the East Coast than it is the West. So
we're going to have to change the time zones, Terry. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, you probably could.
What if we go two time zones, east of the Mississippi and west of the Mississippi?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like last night's game. I mean, I'm quite sure there's a lot of people who stayed up and watched it on kind of today's Saturday.
Yeah, I stayed up and watched it.
But if it had been like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, there'd have been a lot of people maybe turned it off after the third quarter or something.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. We come back, we're going to talk some baseball. We've got to talk some high school baseball. We've got NBA finals to get into and break down. We've got to go get set up for a minute and make sure all the graduations are getting ready and going. Like I said, coming up shortly, Crest and Burns should be live graduations, we think, if long as everything we said we think. Well, Burns will be. I'm pretty 99.9% sure about that. Chris, we've got some logistics moving over to the stadium. They moved to the stadium. Burns stayed inside the gym, so Burns is staying inside from what I've been told. They're going to the stadium at Crest. They're going to the stadium at Kings Mountain. So those were previously had been planned to be inside. Now they've been moved back outside. So Crest and Kings Mountain folks, you can get back out there. They're supposed to start at 9. Kings Mountain will not be live. For Kings Mountain because of logistics. Because of the move to the stadium. We would have had it live inside the auditorium, but with all the seating and then the internet situation over there, we couldn't get it going out at Kings Mountain. So, Terry, what's up?
That's a big thing here because if you was going to have it inside, there's so many tickets that you can allow for people to get in, against fire marshal overloading. But
I've heard the numbers in these situations at these schools anywhere from inside you can get 2 to 3. In these situations, and they're doing overflows in broadcasting to some of the classrooms if people are coming in that don't for the tickets or whatever, and then you also. But if you go to the stadium, I've heard some of them you get up to 12.
Yeah, you get almost as many as you want to come.
So they'd much rather have it in stadiums, but we'll see from what's going on from that. But we will have broadcast of Crest and Burns coming up shortly on YouTube, folks. Just go to their football YouTube channels. We'll have that. Like I said, Kings Mountain will have that posted up on YouTube and Facebook later on this afternoon. We're going to be back after a short break on KTC Broadcasting. We've got NBA Finals, Major League Baseball, State Championship Baseball here in KTC land on KTC Broadcast. We'll be right back.